Hey guys, Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you, and today is going to be my full review of this knife. This is the Steel Will Cutjack. Alright, really nice little knife. I've been very impressed with it so far, so you can expect a fairly positive review, and I've already kind of alluded to that in a couple of other videos where I've used this for comparison. By the way, this is the D2 FRN version. There will be an M390 version with G10 scales, and based on my experience with this one, I think that'd be a knife that's worth checking out. Let me also ask, if you're watching this and know where they've got some of these in stock, go ahead and comment down below. I've had a couple of people sending messages and putting comments on videos along those lines like, hey, I'd really like one and I appreciate you sharing it with us, but where can we get one? So I know a few places have sold out, but hopefully they'll be having stock back in any time now. Let's go ahead and get started with the size and weight, and then we'll talk about all the specifics. I'll tell you what I like, what I dislike, and we'll get to some comparisons in a little while. So, size and weight on this guy, 8 1/8 inches overall. So you guys know I like to see a knife of at least 8 inches, and this it's just a little over. Blade length on this guy is 3 7/16, so it doesn't quite make my 3.5 inch magic number, but close enough. And 4 5/8 handle. Now, one of the impressive numbers here is the weight on this guy at 3.7 ounces. And I'll see if I can show you. Yeah, you can see the milling in those stainless steel liners that do save some weight. By the way, when it comes to carrying this knife, it carries really nicely. It's fairly slim and it's light enough that, you know, you can carry this in a pair of shorts or even a pair of, yeah, I don't know what you call those, like athletic pants, not track pants, but the Under Armour, Nike, they all make some, but they're just really lightweight workout pants, and you can carry this knife in there no problem. So let's move on from there and talk about the blade. Blade is a drop point, high flat grind, but not a full flat grind, D2 steel, very nice looking blade. A fairly standard blade though, okay? This is not a knife this is not a knife blade that, you know, is trying to do anything outlandish. It's just trying to do its job, and for that purpose, I think this blade is really good. D2 steel holds an edge really nicely. Now again, it's not stainless, but it is, I've had no problems with it whatsoever. And as the old saying goes, a used tool never rusts. So if this is something you're gonna have in your pocket and use all the time, I don't think you'll have any issues with it. If you're in a really high humidity environment, I don't know, you live in the Amazon basin or, you know, the Florida Everglades or something, well, sure, put a little bit of oil on this blade. But for most people, certainly my experience with D2 has been very good. By the way, if you're going to put oil on the blade, just either make sure it's food safe or don't use your blade for cutting food. Nice and thin behind the edge here, and you've got a fairly good amount of straight edge and then belly out toward the tip. Again, as I say, that's a fairly standard blade design, and certainly a very functional one. Nice and thin behind the edge, so good slicer. This is a great knife if, you know, I just made this comment about the food safe oil. Well, this is a really nice knife for food prep. It slices really well. So if you're wanting something you could take on a hike and then slice up your fruits and vegetables when you get to a location, good option. Yeah, no issues whatsoever with the blade. I've had good performance in terms of edge holding out of it, and I've also had great performance in terms of actual cutting tasks, both EDC and, you know, more food prep type of stuff. Let's go ahead and talk about lockup and deployment. This is a stainless steel liner lock. It is not on bearings, and that seems to be, you know, the flavor of the month is flippers with bearings, but this one doesn't have that, and I really appreciate that they've done a great job with getting a knife that deploys well. Let's see if I can light switch. Light switch is okay. To me, this knife kind of asks to be push buttoned. Even the jimping on the flipper is sort of in a spot that wants you to just kind of push down and bam, and when you do that, it really flips out nicely. That's what I was trying to say there. It doesn't really drop shut, but it will shake closed if you really give it a little bit of a jerk there. For a knife that's on washers, this is doing a great job. I have absolutely no complaints about the action on this knife, and there is something to be said for a knife on washers. It's just very simple. You know, you don't have to worry about getting gunk and crap in the bearings and having any kind of issues. So definitely appreciate that. The liner lock, the one complaint I do have about the lockup is the liner is a little bit thin. If I compare this to something like, What have I got nearby? Well, something like this has fairly thick liners. So let me show you here. Notice the rake here, the rake knives here on this side has a thicker liner. Other knives you may be familiar with, like a Rat Model 1 or what else? Let's see. Here's a pair of 2, and I know it's not a liner lock, but you can see the thickness of the spring on the pair of 2 is even a little thicker than this guy. Not the end of the world, and as I say, I still really, really like this knife. In fact, I'm going to as well tell you now, this is a knife that's going to stick around in my collection as a standard, as a comparison for other budget knives. It's actually that well done. But yeah, I do have that minor complaint with the lock being a little thin. Not the end of the world. And of course, you know, you're not going to, if you're smart anyway, you're not going to use a folding knife that puts any kind of negative pressure on the blade, because you're going to cut yourself if you make a habit of doing that. So lockup and deployment, very good. It's very comfortable, by the way. Nothing is, you know, this is a knife that you could certainly flip all day and not have any kind of issues with, you know, hot spots or getting sore fingertips or anything like that. Really, really like that. Let's move ahead and talk about the handle and the construction and the ergonomics. So this is, of course, FRN with stainless steel liners. As we already mentioned, there will be a G10 version with M390 steel, which should be a pretty cool knife in and of itself. The size on this guy is just about right for me, but it just barely gets there. Notice you can see the butt of the knife there, just gets all my hand on it. Not a problem, right? It's big enough, but it's kind of on the small sides, on the small end of medium. It does have this front finger choil, which I absolutely love. If you've watched, you know, more than 1 or 2 of my videos, you know I'm a huge fan of that. The FRN handles are definitely grippy enough. Okay, they're not, you know, mind-blowing. If you've got, say, a Spyderco with bidirectional texturing, it's not quite to that level, but it is very, very good, certainly more than adequate. In terms of construction, the FRN and stainless steel is fine, especially at the price point. And of course, if you really, really hate that, but you love the design, you can wait till the M390 version comes out and buy it. Pocket clip is very, very functional, not deep carry, but I don't really, you know, that's not something that concerns me terribly much. And it is reversible from right hand to left hand tip up carry, but that's it, no tip down carry. And I think that makes sense. Not too many people are interested in tip down carry. Finally, one of my little complaints, and it's mostly an aesthetic thing, it's not really a functional matter, but the backspacer here, which is FRN as well, like the handle, I don't know, let me see if I can give you a good look at it. So if you take a really close look, it just looks kind of cheap, okay? It just, I don't know. It doesn't do anything for me at all, and I would love to see this with standoff construction or, you know, some other material making up that backspacer, or even the FRN being finished in a different way that made it look not quite as plasticky. All right. Again, that's only an issue of looks. It doesn't affect the functioning of the knife whatsoever. And it's pretty minor when it comes to how well this knife has done everything else. So let's go ahead, now that we've talked about pretty well everything I want to talk about. Oh, I will say it is Torx construction, so you can pretty easily take this knife apart and fix and maintain it. Or of course, if you want to flip the clip over to the other side, not a big issue if you've got a good Torx set. So let's go ahead now and get some comparisons in here. Let me again remind you that this is going to be a knife that's going to stick around for this purpose in other videos. So let's see, budget flippers, the rake knives, what's this guy? The P105 is very budget friendly. The 14C28N steel on this is not going to be quite as good as D2, but pretty stinking good. What else have we got? Oh, of course you have to put a Rat 1 in here, so let's grab that one next. You can see there's some similarity in the blade shape here. Both of them kind of have most of the belly favored toward the front of the knife. By the way, let me show you this. The cutting edge is very close, and so here's one of the reasons this is going to be sort of a standard knife for me. There's very, very little difference in terms of cutting edge here, but the steel wheel is much lighter and much thinner. So you're getting, you know, almost equal capability to the Rat Model 1, but in a lighter, thinner package that's going to be a little easier to carry. So really, really impressed with that. Now, of course, the longer handle on the Rat 1 does add some advantages, especially for harder use type of stuff. And the Rat 1 is a little heavier built. Remember, let's show you the difference in those liners since we mentioned it earlier. So see the difference in thickness there. That's what I was talking about when I said the liners were a little thin for my preferences. Not really a comparable blade, but one that everyone is familiar with and everyone loves. There's a Para 2, and you can see the Para 2 is just a teeny bit bigger, although the Cutjack does have more cutting edge. Now this would obviously be more comparable to the M390 version, so maybe we'll go ahead and do that. Another knife with similar ergonomics, if you like this but want something just a small step up, the American Lawman is a great knife. This is honestly, these two go in a similar category for me. These are standard knives. These are knives by which you measure other knives. They're that well done. And so this guy again has that great, that finger choil, really nice ergonomics. Of course, this guy costs a little bit more and the steel is a little bit better. But if you really like this kind of size and weight and this kind of ergonomics, then this might be a knife that you'd want to look into. What else have we got for budget flippers? Okay, here's one. Here is the CRKT Carniflux, much larger and much heavier. The steel is not as good on this guy, but these are similar in price point, okay, around that $40–45 price point. This one is on bearings, so it flips a little bit nicer and it certainly drops shut. Okay, so if you're saying to me, Kevin, I'd really like a flipper, but I want better action, I want something that will drop shut for me, well, that certainly is achieved by the Carniflux here. Let's see, a couple more before we call it a day. Another lightweight FRN knife. This is kind of standing in for the Endura and Delica. This is, of course, the Salt, but similar size and construction. And so this guy's kind of here saying, yeah, if you like this, you might want to look at a Delica or an Endura. Probably the Delica is closest in size, but I just can't, it's just too small for me to really recommend. And lastly, I've got a pretty bulky knife here from Rake Knives, the P128SF. Great knife, really like this guy. A little nicer overall, okay? It's just, a little cleaner, a little nicer action. Really nice knife. And so again, if you're looking for a flipper at a reasonable price, this is another good consideration. So overall, guys, what do I think of the steel wheel Cutjack? I really like this knife. It's lightweight, it's well built, it's extremely comfortable in hand. The blade is just great, extremely useful. And not only that, but the price point is right where you want it to be. I think this is a knife that, to me, becomes a knife that I would compare others to see if they're any good. And certainly this will be one that sticks around as a comparison knife for future reference. So really well done. I think this is a total win from Steel Wheel. And if you haven't got one and you like some of those other knives that I showed you, this is a great knife. Highly recommended. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.